All right, so here we are. We're on, get this thing out of here. So let's spend this last lecture on for this week, on week 7. Let's spend it talking a little bit more about e-fulfillment. I think it's something that impacts all of us in our own way, and you've all experienced it. And so I think it's just worth maybe 20 minutes here. I promise not to carry on. Too bad. On this subject. We talked a little bit about just barely touched on, some of the DC management strategies, particularly around waves versus batches. There's so many ways to pick orders these days, and so many ways, so many different tools that are available to do it too. I mean, we're talking about robotic picking stations. We're talking about robotic packaging stations. I mean, it's just a changing, environment from an operational perspective, but also from a societal standpoint, as well as from a supporting standpoint, in that you have to have a lot of technology support here to make all these work. And then somebody's got to fix them when they break, and they will undoubtedly break at some point in time. So there's a lot of ramifications and intersections here that kind of need to go into the strategy. But anyway, e-fulfillment is quite a bit different. Operationally, so let's talk about it a little bit. So we look at traditional fulfillment. We look at generally it's more of a push situation. The product gets put into a network of distribution points or retailers or whatever, and then if it doesn't sell or whatever happens, it either may come back or it goes on sale or it gets liquidated or whatever happens to it at that point in time. Where in an e-fulfillment type of world, you're looking at a percentage of inventory that is pushed, that is, it has to be out there. And then you're looking at another inventory that's more pull. You may not be forecasting it at the same level. It may be serviced by somebody else, like a seller, like a reseller. It's an Amazon order, but it's been serviced by somebody else. It's an Etsy order. It's an eBay order. Overstock order, any of these guys, and they have very, very tight controls that say you will ship within 4 hours. And if you don't do that, or whatever their standard is, then you can be cut off. So you'll be fined for sure, and then you won't get the highest award of stars, and you'll be labeled as a bad supplier to the customer, and that will ultimately, come back and haunt you. So it's very different in that you have these intermediaries, these service companies that are, managing or putting demands on your supply chain, as well as their own. And in this day and age, where we're talking about 48-hour service and things like that, or even hour service or 2-hour service or whatever, it really puts a lot of stress on the supply chain. So requires that you have a network that's capable of doing that. And that network is not only buildings, it's product, and it's service providers and people who are willing to give you 4-hour service on a moment's notice if they don't know about it. So that's one big thing. Obviously, traditional fulfillment is more pallet load or truckload or whatever it might be, where e-fulfillment is small cartons. And so it's much more in the parcel range. Which means on a per pound basis, it's very high. It's very expensive to do. In e-fulfillment, customers expect and demand that if the product that they ordered is not what they want, they can return it to the supplier at no cost. And in a traditional fulfillment environment, that's generally not the case. The numbers are pretty stark. You'll see a little bit about that next week, but I can tell you in the e-fulfillment world right now, return rates run about 30%. So understanding versus more like 8% here, 5 to 8% on this side, 30% on this side. So knowing why that happens is one of the topics for next week. and understanding how to mine the data and get the analytics out of that data is, again, part of what we do in reverse logistics. Again, you're dealing to a fairly limited set of locations versus a very large number of geographically dispersed, including worldwide. So as you look at the Amazons of this world, you will see that they are shipping worldwide now. They're offering a Prime service in China, but it's not 48 hours, obviously, because that's impossible. But they are offering Prime service in China, and they're offering that up against Alibaba. So there's a reason they're doing it, and a strategic reason for them to do that. And so it'll be interesting to see what you come up with on that. On traditional fulfillment, you're looking at, again, normally ship and receive within 7 days is not unusual unless it's big, heavy railroad type stuff or coastal shipping type stuff. Versus e-fulfillment, which the expectation is, as I said, or as you know, or as you expect, 2 days. And it's just amazing that we went from, well, if I get it here in a week, it's okay, to now, if I don't get it here in 2 days, I don't want it. And, there's a new term for this now, which is it's gone from what they call the service economy to the convenience economy. And it's all built around the consumer. So, and the consumer can be not necessarily you or I at our home. The consumer can be Mississippi Limestone's customer. They want it when they want it. So this gets us into this network we call micro-logistics. And micro-logistics is probably best explained by Amazon, which, of course, as you know, has gone out and done about close to 100 of these regional, localized centers that are built around local demand. Well, local demand means you have to have an inventory segmentation policy that looks at local demand, and not only that, as we spoke about before, if you have an hourly, if your service standard is 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, your demand planning has to be at the same level. So if you have to know what you have to have in order to service it against the service standard that you've established. So the tighter you make that, the more inventory, in theory, you have to hold because of variability, right? But you're working with a smaller area, so maybe there's a backup strategy of some sort for them to service it out of a backup facility if you can't do it, but it won't be in 2 hours if that's the case. So all this can create a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on the network. So not every product is in a micro logistics center. Selected products are in micro logistics centers, and the reason for that is up to the marketing team. But that's the nature of this. So what's driving this? Well, it's the customers. We just said the customer has much more power today. They have much more access into the network today, all the way from desktops to tablets to mobile apps to walking in the door. So the customer has a lot more power, and I said the expectation of the customer is in the United States, okay, is very different than the customer elsewhere around the world. But it's an expectation that says that I want it when I want it. I want what I want, when I want it, and where I want it. So today you may ship to my home. Tomorrow I want you to ship to a locker, or I want you to ship to my office, or I want you to ship to my friend's house. So there's nothing stable about these relationships. Every transaction is its own transaction, and then it's pretty much done. And the customer expects that the shipper has this information. They have an abundance of information. They can give them track and trace. Without track and trace, you're not going to have very many customers. And so the customer expects that, and they expect that information to be accurate. And I don't know about you, but in my house, we're getting signals saying it's not only out for delivery, it's been delivered on a mobile app. So that's the world we live in today. And this is all about competition. So if you don't do it, somebody else will. And they very well may take your customer away from you. because pricing has kind of become transparent. I mean, it's the expectation, the customer's expectation is that I'll pay a little more for service, even though there may be a better price. And if they don't get it, then you've lost them for either a period of time or forever. So that's the world we're in right now. And of course, the consumer is 70% of the GDP. So not a party you want to irritate. We just said that. So that forces us as supply chain management to rethink, reposition, and retool our supply chain strategy in order to stay competitive, in order to drive profits. So this means using all the tools we have, including outsourcing, to execute the strategy in the most profitable and competitive way we can. And this is unique to the B2C type business, perhaps, more than the traditional fulfillment side. So whether you want to have dedicated facilities to it, as we spoke about in the last lecture, or whether you want to have multitasking facilities that do all of it, that's a strategic decision that you have to make. And how much you want to keep in-house and how much you want to outsource, if at all. But as we also said, restructuring a supply chain is a very complex, capital intensive, and critical undertaking. You don't just, if you're in a market where you are being compelled to consistently and constantly restructure to respond to competition, you don't want to own anything. You want to be able to do that, and you do that with third parties. So if that's the environment you're in, or if you have a category that's in that environment, you want to build your network around responding to that customer requirement that says, I want what I want when I want it, where I want it. And that more than likely suggests that you're going to go into at least a partial outsourcing mode, because you can't be everywhere. You can't afford it, because the costs of this are pretty high, and a third party can help leverage across other customers that a company by itself can't do. So we're shifting from that traditional distribution model, or a traditional hub and spoke, where we have regional warehouses. You can basically reach 85 to 90% of the population from 5 facilities. And if you need to be there overnight, you can generally do it from 9. And you can do better than that if you need to. But for the most part, you can generally do it between 5 and 9 operations, depending upon where your demand is, where the majority of your demand is. You can do that with that many facilities, but you can't do micro logistics with 5 sites, and that's been and be competitive. So that's the pressure Amazon is putting on everybody with Prime, is customers are going to pay for that service, and if you don't give it, they're going to buy from us. And if they don't find your product on there, they're going to find somebody else's product on there, because they want that service. So we talk about micro logistics, we're talking about this. This would be, for example, 631, 630, 633. This could be where the Amazon fulfillment center in Edwardsville, plus the Illinois counties, the collar counties here, this region. So the metropolitan region here could be serviced by the Edwardsville micro logistics facility. Then in Kansas City, you would have another one over here. So you can get overnight into Columbia, you can get overnight into Springfield, you can get overnight into the overwhelming majority of the population from really 2 sites. Which one makes more sense will depend upon what's the cost to bring it this way, or the cost to bring it this way, and that will vary by potentially the product. You obviously can get overnight from here to here and here to here. So this is part of the strategy. And if you're dealing in groceries, then it changes that strategy versus hard goods. So again, all these factors come into place. All right, so what do you get from it? Well, you absolutely get better responsiveness. You get reduced delivery times. You will get a reduced delivery cost because you're on the last mile already versus coming from a farther distance. But your costs on a per pound basis are going to be higher. You would get a better mix because you're only putting into that center what it is you need to sell when you need to sell it based upon your demand plan. But you're going to be slicing this down into demand segments that are way below where when you roll it up versus rolling it up. Um, so you have many more sites, which affects the number of inventory locations. You have more variability, and so the trick is how do you take all that out? And you don't do that by putting everything in it. You do it by optimizing, if you will, what products really belong in this strategy and what products really belong in an echelon strategy that we've spoken about as well too. So the multi-echelon strategy still exists. Still, it exists in Amazon too. So that's what you have to decide corporately is what belongs out there and what doesn't. What do you want to support at that level? So where are these? I mentioned to you, where are these hot spots? Well, here are the hot spots. This is a graphic from the Wall Street Journal. It's kind of beat up, even though it came from the website. But you can see here's Kansas City right here, which actually has a bigger share of the market than St. Louis. St. Louis is growing primarily because of Amazon. Amazon, I'm told, is looking at a potential air cargo operation out at Lambert that would require 300,000 square feet to go on top of their 2.5 million square feet they have over in Illinois. So it would be a separate operation, but that would be very important. But you can see Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, the logical places that you might, think here's Reno here, LA, New York, West Philadelphia in this case. So you can, this is where people are going. So if you're looking at echelon inventories, this is kind of where people are going. And this gets back to the pressure on real estate rates. And so lease rates have gone through the roof in a lot of these places. This is Cincinnati right here. It's very difficult to find a facility in Cincinnati right now, unless you want it built to suit. There's very little spec building left. And what is being left, because Amazon has a big presence here, Amazon's renting everything. So there's a very competitive market. Columbus is a very competitive market and has been for a long time. The Greenville-Spartanburg area is primarily, in Charlotte, is heavy Amazon and heavy Walmart and Lowe's. So this is very tight right now. LA is LA. This is the Inland Empire. Everybody's out there because of the port. And then Denver just because of the service standard that you have to have. So you can get some idea where it's going, but if you're not in these locations and you're in the e-commerce business, you might want to ask yourself why, potentially. But then secondly, if you do elect to go into here, just keep in mind that these are very, very competitive markets and spaces, just not sitting out there waiting for you to show up. You can see that Nevada, which is sitting right there, and Las Vegas right there, they're in the same boat. The developers out there did not build because of the capital crunch coming out of 2008, and now the demand is just off the charts. So this is a huge job growth opportunity. It's coming at the expense of some of the retail jobs, some of the in-store jobs, but this is a very strong opportunity, but of course are not the highest paying jobs and people that don't necessarily want to do them. This chart here, you pull this over here, you can see it. This is showing the crunch. So we went from a 9% vacancy rate down to 6.3, and some of these markets down here, like Cincinnati, it's under 3. Very little space available. Nevada, it's probably not even that. So Atlanta's very tight. Philadelphia is tightening up as the New York market's moving this way. Get out of this disaster up here. So again, it's very tight right now, and from an e-commerce perspective, you can kind of line these up a little bit with the ports. I mean, here's Savannah coming in here, which will service this. You have Charleston servicing this. They get away from the port. area. Philadelphia is a port. Um, inland port, um, inland port. Of course, these are basically ocean ports. Even Reno, you have a dedicated train out of Oakland that goes right up there. So what I'm trying to get to here is this, which is, see if I can get this out of here. The supply chain of today is very different than the supply chain of the past. And so as supply chain management, we have to think very strategically now. We have to figure out what is the competitive advantage we can bring to our companies, how can we drive profit dollars by doing something different. And as I said, this whole concept of analytics at a deeper market level is a huge part of this. So this gets back to being able to forecast demand at an hourly level, if that's what your service level is, or a 3-hour level, or a 4-hour level, whatever it is. You have to look at, do we want to do this direct? Do we want to do this through a multi-echelon inventory? What's the cost of that? And so you're going to get into a lot of modeling, a lot of simulation. And we spoke about total cost of ownership to the extent, so these are decisions that would be made on a total cost basis. You've got to map it out. You got to map out the cost. You got to map out the network. And chances are most companies don't have these models to do that. And so you've got to simulate it. You've got to partner up with somebody who knows how to do this, who can be your 3PL. Who does know how to do this. And remember now, you've got to define the whole deal on networking and simulation is you have to define your business. You have to do that. You're not your third party. You have to define your business, and the first thing you do in simulation is build what we call the base case, and the base case is replicate your current cost structures, locations, inventory, investments, everything that's in there. You replicate that, and then once you get that buy off, that is, you sign in blood, then you let her rip, and then you can do this in a heuristic basis, you can do this in an optimization basis, whatever it is. But that's what you have to do, is define your business, and maybe not necessarily what it is today, but what it's going to look like going forward, because that's what you're modeling. It's what you need to go forward, and this is something that can't be done in a silo. You've got to work cross-functionally. You have to work internally as well as externally. So if you use, because transportation will be a big part of this, your sourcing would be a big part of this, manufacturing would be a big part of this. So it is truly, truly very strategic, but supply chain is in the best position to lead this because supply chain management is used to dealing at these levels. Dealing one cross-functionally, understand the trade-offs associated with it, and is in a better place to understand what the customer is saying than marketing or sales is. So I'm gonna walk through Sears. This is a case of actually from last year. Sears, which you know is under a lot of stress to even stay open, last year for holiday, elected to change their fulfillment strategy. And as a result of the shopping online experience and the best-in-class competitors who are vis-a-vis Amazon, or say Amazon. So Sears was looking for a way, how can we do this without capital investment? And they focused on this. They focused on saying, we're going to take a subset of the store network and use that for online fulfillment. So this is what they did, and I'm going to walk you through this. This is one example of how this company restructured their network without the capital investment facilities. So this graphic, if you blow it up, if you take this to, you can see that in their former network, their one-day service was 12% of their demand, and it was only here. That's it. 41% was second day. So this is Sears. And when they went to using store fulfillment versus distribution center fulfillment, they went to this. They went to 80% one day. So they placed the order against the store and shipped from the store. So they went from 12% one day of demand to 80% using 460 stores, or 400 some stores. Kmart went from that same 12%, because they share the same infrastructure, right, to 85% by using the stores. So this was a strategy that they used. And today, Target announced that they are going to use, Target does much the same thing. They have over 400 stores involved in fulfillment. And they're going, and Target will increase that for the holiday to 1,000 stores. Now, the trick on the store is that you have a customer walking. How do you protect that inventory? How do you make that inventory not available if you're in an out of stock situation, or you're in a low stocking situation into your safety stock, and you or I walk down the aisle and we take the last bottle of whatever it is. Now all of a sudden they've got that order and they don't have the inventory because they just sold it. So there's a lot that goes into shipping from a store that makes it inefficient from a cost standpoint, but it's certainly a strategy compared to going into more real estate, which Sears cannot financially go into more real. They're selling real estate, so how do you go into more real estate? So this is the strategy that they chose to move forward with. So I thought I'd share that with you, just as one major player's solution as to how to do it. And that again, we talked about collaboration. This is a collaboration. They had multiple stakeholders. Their product was called Cheetah. And by the way, when you look at Amazon, make sure you look at Dragon Boat. Dragon Boat is the Amazon 3PL initiative. And familiarize yourself with Dragon Boat, and be familiar. Just kind of something you're going to want to discuss when you look at strengths and weaknesses of Walmart and Amazon. So anyway, back to Sears. Sears, these were the stakeholders, and this is where it came from. This is what each side did in terms of the stakeholders. So again, it reached across the aisle. It reached across into the different functions that had not maybe collaborated before, but as a result of competition, they were forced to collaborate. And they were able to come up with that strategy, which for them worked well. So as you can see, they expanded the overnight network very quickly by using the stores, and everybody worked together very well, and they have continued to refine this program, but they're still doing much the same thing. Just like Home Depot, 45% of Home Depot's online orders are picked up in the store, and few people have reached that kind of penetration on online orders that people are willing to go to the stores. But most people who order from Home Depot are prepared to go into the stores because we almost always need something else. I'm not familiar with the numbers for Lowe's or Menards or anybody like that, but I know that number from Home Depot. So just a lot of different strategies out there, and I think as you go through the strategic side of this and look at how some of these folks are playing this out, it's still very much a work in process right now in terms of what this omni-channel thing is going to look like, or how the companies, the retailers particularly, want to manage the e-fulfillment side, which is a strength of the third-party guys who have a lot more flexibility. They have a lot more space. They have systems already in place, and that's what they do. So I would look for that market segment if you're looking to invest. That would probably be a pretty good place to look. So hopefully that'll give you a sense for a little bit about it. I think we all came into this with the expectation that the internet itself would clean up a lot of business problems that we were experiencing, like accuracy and errors and returns and things like that. But in fact, what it's done is created its own set of challenges. And what we found is that many of these challenges on the internet side are really related to logistics strategies. So in a lot of ways, the big box retailers are nothing more than logistics companies. The service providers like Amazon are logistics companies. They're not particularly marketing company. They're logistics companies. So again, this is the influence of logistics and supply chain into today's market economy. And of course, it's growing around the world, particularly with the growth of the middle class in China and the growing middle class in India. There's a high demand for certain products from the United States. They have a better image in some of those countries as being better quality, which they very likely are. So there's some regulation loosening on what we can, the amount of money we can ship without doing certain things, without being dutiable. Used to be $400, now it's 800 and some odd dollars. So again, this is an evolving market right now, and very challenging and very interesting. And if you've got a taste for this, then I'm sure you can find a place to go. So that's it for that, and we will. This is the end of week 7. So the 2 cases we have are the Liquor Board of Ontario, which is a case on automatic store palletization. And then the other one is Purdue Farms, which is a case on a vertical supply chain. So they're all set for you to go. We only have 1 more week to go. So good luck. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and Turkey Day week. Sorry you got to work, but that's what the university requires. So me too. So I'll see you on the other side.